Welcome back to A Little Bit of Cheese, your bite-sized Wisconsin sports podcast. I'm your host, Cody Depius. That is Sam Douglas, and I do have to foremost apologize that I ended last week's Monday episode by saying we'll see you at the end of the week. Kind of forgot that Monday that my bachelor party was coming up on the weekend, so that podcast would not have been a great podcast. It might have been funny, it might have been entertaining, but it would not have had the content that we need here on A Little Bit of Cheese. So we're back. We got a lot to cover as a lot of stuff happened last week. Sam, how was your weekend?
It was awesome. It was a good weekend in lacrosse, but it wasn't a bachelor weekend. Congratulations to you, Cody. That's really cool. That's really cool.
Thank you.
Bachelor party was awesome.
Yeah, it was sweet. We went out to the Dells. We hit the Pin Seekers there in DeForest, that little kind of Top Golf-like thing, which is a blast. I could easily spend 5 hours there. It was so much fun. Hit up the casino a little bit and got to hang out with family and friends, and it was a great weekend. Aside from watching the Badgers lose to Penn State, I will say, while we were at Pin Seekers, so there were highs, there were lows, but definitely mostly highs. I want to start the top of the podcast here talking about the Packers, as today is the official opening of free agency. So a lot's been going on. DK Metcalf has been traded to Pittsburgh. It took a second-round pick, but Pittsburgh signed him to a 5-year, $150 million extension. That's a lot of money. I don't think Brian Gutekunst would want to fork over for a guy like DK Metcalf. Your thoughts on that one first and foremost?
I've been on the page and I didn't want to see us force the issue with the receiver. So I'm glad if he's making this kind of money, that doesn't feel like something that was in our budget going. I think he's worth it. I think he's been in the league for like 15 years and he's still 27 or something like that. DK is a guy in this league. He's worth a second round pick. I think that's a steal for a second round pick, to be honest with you. And if the Steelers have the cap space to pay the man, it's a good move for him. And hey, Rodgers watching Pittsburgh right now. You called it earlier.
Rodgers watching Pittsburgh, and there are a lot of things swirling around this bachelor weekend, and we did bring up the Aaron Rodgers prophecy once again, where there were also reports it is a real legitimate chance that he goes to Minnesota. Like, there are betting lines that have started to increase on that. The reports are opening up. I think that's a top 3 option for him. I don't think we need to go into that anymore. We'll have to see what happens with Sam Darnold because, of course, I know Pittsburgh's going to look into him. You know, Seattle's going to look into him after they just traded Geno Smith as well. So this next 2 weeks here in the NFL season is where things really start to shake out and you get your foundations of what's going to be in the NFL next year. Devontae Adams has signed with the LA Rams. It was reported that the Packers didn't even contact him. I'm pretty upset about that. Everyone knew my thoughts. I called it the marriage that needed to happen once again. Yeah, there might have been a divorce, but sometimes they come back and sometimes it works out. And I think this is one that definitely could have been beneficial for Green Bay. The contract wasn't ridiculous. I think Green Bay could have been able to do it. A little bit disappointed that they didn't even reach out.
That's a contract that the Packers could have been able to pay. Absolutely. I think it's like 2 for 46 or something like that, just in that 20 million a year. For a stud wide receiver, Devontae can still put up numbers. He can still get separation. Yeah. He's still that sure-handed guy that the Packers would really, really love. Now, I think we have some of those guys in the locker room, and I want to see Kraft get those opportunities. But Devontae's still doing it. Him and Cooper Kupp giving that to Matt Stafford and Kyren Williams, man, that offense is
Puka.
They're not there. Yeah.
Puka as well. And so much has happened over there in LA. Khalil Mack re-signed for the Chargers. These options that Green Bay was looking into. We also talked about the Myles Garrett, although a long shot. He has re-signed with Cleveland. Who else? Max Crosby as well. Both of them signing huge, massive contracts. Green Bay wouldn't have wanted to fork over. All of those fun conversations we had the last couple of weeks. Is there any fun predictions that we had that are still even possible at this point, the first couple hours of free agency?
I mean, the big names are going. Hassan Reddick just signed today in Tampa Bay. That's another edge guy that's off the board. Garrett wanted to get out of Cleveland. And,
you might have to go back like 10 seconds.
Yeah, I just hope.
Staying there, Sam. Yeah, you cut out just a little bit on. You
Yeah, I
started
think
with
all
Reddick.
the big names are off the board, and Reddick is off the board. Mack is off the board. Reddick just went to Tampa Bay, I think, this morning. All the big name edge rushers and the couple of wide receivers that we've been talking about are gone. And I'm hoping this doesn't turn into an offseason. I don't think it will. If we didn't even call Devontae, it feels like there's a plan that Goody has. But I hope that we're not looking at this offseason like the way we're looking at the Brewers offseason. Where we did nothing. We have a young team. The salary cap, it doesn't make sense in the NFL to not spend your money way that like it might in baseball. Like spend your money. I hope there's a plan. I hope something's cooking. You're seeing guys fly off the board. I really hope today or tomorrow they make a move on somebody somewhere. But it feels like Goody has a plan that nobody knows about.
Yeah.
I don't know. Where do you think he's going? It feels like all these big things are falling off right now.
You see, I look at this, and even who would be open to trading on the market with all this cap space, like there is no reason that Green Bay is not out there and calling a Devontae Adams unless you have something big in the back of your mind that you're actually trying to hammer. You do know that they were at least inquiring on Metcalf, so I like to hear about that. I mean, I think Metcalf for a straight up second they would have done, but I think where Metcalf was looking at the restructuring of his contract and the extension, I think that's probably where they drew the line. It was also reported today that the Packers will not re-sign Josh Myers, the center. I am okay with that. He was like up until last year, I was pretty anti Josh Myers. He was probably I think he was the worst rated center in the NFL his first couple years starting. Last year, he was 30th out of 32 ranked out of the starters. I mean, visually, he played a lot better last year. I think he did too. He only allowed the 2 sacks as opposed to his previous career low of 5. I thought he was someone I would have been okay then bringing back, but I think the market's going to be stronger than what they wanted to re-sign him for. They have Malik Monk, who they drafted in the 5th round last year. I know he's going to be an option. There are a couple of free agency options that were also taken off the board as Dahlman is now headed to Chicago. Whoop-de-doo. So we'll see if Green Bay, they might look into like a 4th or 5th round pick, maybe even a 3rd if they don't like the progression of Malik Monk in his first year. He didn't start at all last year. What we saw in preseason, I think, was something that you want to look into. At least there were a lot of potential spots, you think, for Malik Monk, and that you can move this offensive line around a lot too. We know Elgin Jenkins was able to move inside to center, and you know that Jordan Morgan probably projects a lot better as a guard. I think that's where they want to put him. So I think that's a possibility too, where Jenkins moves to center and you have Morgan go to one of the guard spots. What do you think about this offensive line without a Josh Myers?
I think it's sad to see Josh Myers go. He was just someone that felt like was a project for us, and we were always waiting for him to take that next step. We thought that we had this center, this young drafted center that took a little bit for the wheels to get going on him, and they just never did. He always looked promising, and we were always waiting for him to be that next level, maybe even Pro Bowl type of center, and it just never happened. And at some point, you got to pull the plug on those guys, and we've had no problem at all having 3rd, 4th, 5th round offensive linemen step up and do the job. So with Morgan coming back, I think the depth at offensive lineman was surprisingly a strong suit for this team last year, and they were young. So I don't think that losing Myers is a big issue. I will say on the offensive line front, you mentioned Dahlman. As these free agent signings are happening, teams are getting better. It's not just names getting off the board. The Chicago Bears added Thuney and they added Dahlman. They're beefing up their offensive line. They're getting ready for Caleb Williams to have a little bit of protection back there. So as you see these names getting off the board, the NFC North is getting better. These teams around you are getting better, and you have to answer that.
Yes, you do. And Aaron Jones is back in Minnesota too. And as we talked about, I think the one tweet that I saw is Packers fans have that fear of the boogeyman with the possibility of Rodgers going to Minnesota. Like that possibility has grown a little bit too strong for my liking because I think that it could be real. I really do. We'll see what Pittsburgh does. We'll see where Russell Wilson goes. We'll see about Justin Fields. But I think that actually could happen. I think the real report was if Daniel Jones does not end up in Minnesota, that Rodgers is a true possibility. And I don't think Jones is going to end up back in Minnesota. I will say that. I feel that's more likely, which then you just go down the line with the transitive property, and Rodgers could be that guy, and he could go there. And, Minnesota's too good to just sit back, and I think give the reins to a second-year starter who didn't play at all last year. Well, not even second-year starter, second-year player who he did draft at the 10th overall pick in J.J. McCarthy. But I don't know if you put that much trust with the roster and how good that team played, at least in the regular season last year. They're going to do more than that. I don't think Darnold is coming back either from the way that it sounds in the reports that are coming out. So a little bit disappointing, I think, to this point for Green Bay. Nothing terrible. I don't think a true indictment quite yet because there is time and there's a lot of opportunity for Goody to do something. I think a trade might be on the horizon. I don't know if he can trade these draft picks. He loves them that much, but maybe he changes the philosophy just a little bit because there is depth on this roster, and that's the really strong suit, I think, for Green Bay. You just lack high-end talent. You have starters that are deep into your bench, but you don't have those stud, all-pro, game-changing guys that are on the roster. There might be 3 top 100 players on this team where you look like a Detroit or a Baltimore, you're seeing more like 7 to 9. That's really what you need. Or Philly was probably like 10 to 11. You're not going to be able to do it with 3. The depth is nice, but it gives Goody an opportunity, I think, to go trade. So we'll see what happens with all this. A little bit disappointed. I think the saddest one was the fact that they didn't reach out to Devontae Adams, that it just felt like it would have been too perfect, and maybe that's what it was in hindsight. Some other not fun stuff going on this weekend. We talked about it while I was at Pin Seekers. I was watching the Badgers go up 16-3 on Penn State and then shooting horrendously for the rest of the game. John Tonje, 2 for 13 from the field, 13 points. A loss at home on senior day to Penn State, now ranked 18th. What are you taking from this Badgers loss?
It's a tough loss, man. We know this Badgers team is streaky, and we're in March, so it's time to start stacking wins, and it's time to get hot. It's not a time to start losing bad games to Penn State and be shooting bricks and air balls like they were, and blowing leads and blowing late game opportunities. This is the time of the year where you start to be refined and you start to take care of business. You beat the bad teams and you play the good teams well, and we've seen this for like 2 weeks, man, Cody. I don't want to say the wheels are falling off. They sure might be.
Yeah, and I don't know. You have to put a good chunk of this on guard, right? The flow of these games and situationally, like this team was overperforming, I think, at that point where they were being ranked top 10. I think that they were, and now you're starting to see them really, really come down to earth. Maybe a little bit harder than we would have liked to see. Like this kind of feels like a free fall at this point. You can save yourself. You have the Big Ten tournament starting on Thursday. The Badgers have the 5 seed. I think they could beat any of these teams here in the Big Ten. I think they could win this tournament, where I think getting to the semis gets you back to the point where you need to be here where this Badgers team is. You just need to get a little bit of that momentum, that confidence back before the NCAA tournament starts in a couple of weeks. And I think this is a huge year when it comes to Greg Gard and how hot that seat can get, because yes, the sustained consistency over the regular season and making the tournament, that's all great, but it does come down to how this team can perform in March, and we haven't seen them perform in March for, I think, too long. And no, this team wasn't supposed to be where they were in the regular season, but I think when it comes down to the end of it, if they perform exactly how we expected them to at the beginning of the season, how much of a plus can you actually give to Gard? Because I think this would actually come down to it as more of a negative season, where that seat gets a little bit hotter, regardless of that team performed really well when it came to January and February, and they looked like they could be a Sweet 16 lock. But at this point, I'm scared for round one where seeding could come out here. Like how much is riding on these next couple of weeks here?
We were talking 2 seeds a little bit ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago.
I don't think we have much of a chance in the Big Ten tournament. I think we can beat a lot of teams. I just don't think we have. I don't think we will. I mean, we had a tough game against Minnesota last week too.
Yeah.
I just don't see us putting together really good ball when Michigan State is balling out right now. That's a team that's getting hot. They're beating the good teams. They just walloped Michigan, I think, over the weekend.
Yeah.
So I think this Badger team is going to settle into like that 5-6 range. And guard season, I think you're 100% correct. It's going to come down to what we do in this tournament. Because the fact of the matter is he did have a team that was overperforming. Do something with it. You know, it's an opportunity. You can't just say, oh, we overperformed for most of the season. Great success. Thumbs up. The Brewers last year, I think it was a great season. You get knocked by the Mets like that. I don't think anybody's happy with the end result.
Right.
It just leaves a little bit more on the table. And so, yeah, the NCAA tournament's a little bit different than baseball playoffs because you're dealing with the 64-team bracket and it all happens so fast. But I think if they can get out of the first weekend, I still think they can make the Sweet 16. It's going to come down to matchup, and it's going to come down to being streaky. But I don't trust them if it comes down to a late game situation. They haven't given me reason to. They're one of the best free throw shooting teams in the country, but they can't put it together a late game situation. That has to be on coaching. It has to be on simple execution, inbounding plays, draw up an easy 2. Those are the things that are winning you these close games. You have the free throws available at your hand. That's such an asset. To not come away in these crunch time wins is frustrating.
Panic button? Question mark? Maybe? Almost?
Yeah, it's there. It's there. I have higher hopes for Marquette, though. Cam Jones just put up a little 30 ball the other day.
Yeah.
They played St. John's really, really well. So I think Marquette was stumbling for a little bit. That might be the Wisconsin team to latch on the bandwagon here.
Those dog days they were supposed to hit a couple of weeks ago, and then you want to be building as you work towards these tournaments and your postseasons. And they switched it, and they've done this the last couple of years where they found that high a little bit too early, and you're kind of limping when it comes to the postseason. And you really don't like to see it. And they have an opportunity to get out of a limp and really make up some ground here, I think, in this Big Ten tournament. Because I think a lot of it right now is the confidence. Like 2 for 13 for John Tonje. They're not going to win if he is not out there confidently shooting and killing it. Like, he needs to play really well for this team to win. And that's even if you have a good John Blackwell game or Max Klesmit can do something, which I think him getting back onto the floor is going to help this team a lot. But that confidence is such a big thing for these guys, the way that they can play offensively. If they're not feeling it and you see the same shooting percentages that these guys have had the last couple of weeks, you're not looking at a good chance when it comes to the NCAAs. That's just the bottom line. They have to find that mojo. They got to get the mojo back, and then I think you're looking at a Sweet 16 opportunity, but that's the bottom line. They have to figure out what's going on between the ears. This is a team that is physically there, just mentally has felt sluggish. It felt like maybe that hangover after being ranked 11th and being high. And then, of course, you had your really close games and an opportunity to take down. Like, I mean, off of that Purdue game was huge. And then after that, just skidding. So we'll see if they can get out of it. Big Ten tournament starting Thursday. Badgers have the 5. The Bucks have lost 2 straight. They lost 111-109 to the Magic. And they lost tough one yesterday, 112-100 to the Cavs. That was like a 12-point game. The entire game, just consistently, they got down and then were able to hang the rest of the way. But 29% from 3, 42% from the field. Not a terrible feeling here for the Bucks, but they could have done something pretty nice last week.
They had a really tough schedule the past 2 weeks, and not just the teams that they played. I think it was kind of an easy enough schedule. Magic and Cavs are 2 good teams, but they were going back and forth. Like it was a home game, then a road game, then a back-to-back where it was home road, then another back-to-back where it was road home. Like, and they were just traveling like crazy. So they ended up in Cleveland on the second night of a long travel of a back-to-back. Cleveland's a really hot, really good team.
Yes.
We're a little bit on the older side. I don't expect us to win that game. I really don't. And the Magic, that's a tough team. I think I would have liked to see us win. We're playing good ball. I talked about Bobby Portis being a black hole on offense and the ball movement not happening with him out there. And I think I'm a little bit validated on that. I saw a stat come up the other day during the game. We had 6 games of 6+ players in double figures all season with Bobby Portis, up until when he was out. Since then, we've had 7 games of 6 guys in double figures.
Yeah.
So it's this small sample size, but the ball's moving around. More guys are getting involved. Kevin Porter Jr. with 14 assists and a triple-double last week was absolutely electric. This guy's stepping up. It doesn't happen if Bobby Portis is out there with him. If your bench guy, if you have someone in that bench rotation, that's that black hole on offense and the ball's not swinging, I feel like that's going to undercut a lot of this bench unit success. And giving KPJ the keys to the castle on that second unit to get some quality ball movement, and that's the difference between the Cavs and what the Bucks were doing last night. We looked a little sluggish, but their ball movement was second to none. And I think that's going to be crucial for the Bucks going forward. Is that ball movement is whizzing around. We have the guys, we have studs that'll hit these threes in Taurean Prince and AJ Green. We know Kyle Kuzma is a cutter now. We added that element to the offense. So as long as we don't get too stagnant, and I'm nervous for when Bobby comes back, Cody. I really am, because I like this ball movement. I think we're playing good.
I think they like Jericho Sims too, and I liked what I've seen from him. That's another strong athlete that adds a lot when you put him out there on the floor. I'm curious what happens when Bobby comes back. You would imagine that those minutes are going down. Like watching this team play now without him. Like as you said, we know what Bobby can do. That there is a positive aspect to having Bobby out there on the floor, because he can be somebody who can go on a nice stretch and have a solid game where he can put up 20 plus. But when you see the black hole Bobby, that there has to come a time where maybe Rivers has a bit of a quick leash on him, and you put Sims out there and you just let the other guys do their thing. This past week, like you said, that win that you could have had against the Magic, that one stunk a little bit. Yesterday, that game against the Cavs, the shots just weren't falling, and I don't think that it was really as much of a point that the Bucks were getting dominated. There was that chunk there right before the end of the first half and the beginning of the second half where it was just Giannis ball. That was the only offense it felt like. They were letting him do everything. The Bucks team can't rely on that. It can't just be one guy in a league like this anymore. And Damian Lillard needs to make those shots, and those weren't happening. Kuzma didn't have a great game either, but I feel okay with where this Bucks team is at. I mean, you're right there with the 4 spot. That's what you're seeing. I don't think the 3 is going to happen. Some crazy things would have to happen for that to be in play once again, but you're seeing where this team is going to be when it comes to the playoffs. I'm not worried about them switching spots at all, and right now it's just watching these guys continue to mesh together and just get better individually. Like right now, it's not worrying about what everything else is going on in the league, which I know last week we were watching Boston go nuclear with their 7th and 8th guys. That can be scary, but where the Bucks are at right now, you just look at what they're doing on an individual basis and how this team continues to improve.
If Peyton Pritchard's going to be out here dropping 43 points, Cody, the league is cooked, man. The Celtics are so good. I mean, I think Giannis is could be the top 10 player of all time. I think he's been robbed of MVPs. He could have been a 6-time MVP by now. I think he's a better defensive player than Jokic and Shea, and offense is right there. There's no reason to not be calling this guy one of the greatest to ever do it, and he can absolutely put a team on his back. Big fan of Damian Lillard. I think Doc Rivers is a good coach. I think we have good shooters. I think we can put it together in a half-court offense, but if Peyton Pritchard is putting up 43 points the same night Derek White is putting up 41, we're fucked. We
Yeah.
just are. That's the first bomb I've dropped on a little bit of cheese, but we
Yeah.
just are, man. Their defense is so good, and if their 6, 7 guys are putting up that type of offense efficiency, man, I just don't see how anybody's matching up with the Celtics right now. They've been biding their time all season long, kind of like the Chiefs were putting together wins, but it looked like they weren't really taking games all that seriously. I feel like that's what the Celtics have been doing. And I think Missoula is actually that freaky smart coach.
Yeah.
That he's
Oh yeah.
he's got a couple screws missing, but he's got a couple extra screws in the coaching part of the brain too.
Yes, there
So
are.
I don't think the Celtics should lose more than 4 games this postseason. I hate to say it, but
Yeah, but
there's
that's why we watch. That's why we love sports. Yeah, there's no you look at these teams and where they're at. Boston is younger, they're more athletic, they're better coached, they have a deeper roster. Like that they have every card against Milwaukee that you would want. But who knows? Like that's the whole thing. I'm thinking like if Milwaukee matches in a 7-game series, I'll give them a 5% chance. Or if you see that series 20 times, Milwaukee could get one of them. I think that's where it's at right now. And I don't know if there's anyone to blame except for Boston just running things the right way. The way they've constructed that roster, the way that team has played. And they've been doing it for these past couple of years. You saw them actually break through and get that championship last year. And now it's how long does this go on for Boston? They've just done things the right way. And it's hard to, when you have a team like that, especially where they're at right now, we'll see what happens. But for Milwaukee, yes, we might be effed as you look at it. Some other news that we missed by about an hour last week on Monday. I like this one a lot. The Milwaukee Brewers signing Jose Quintana, and that hence my name. If you can't beat him, sign him. Quintana was a guy who I think has been rumored to be traded to the Brewers like 4 or 5 times over the course of his career. You've watched him pitch for St. Louis, for Chicago, for Pittsburgh, and he has been a Brewer killer over the course of his career. Even last year, you watched him pitch for the Mets in that wild card series. He has a 2.98 career ERA against Milwaukee. He's 36 years old, coming off a really solid season for New York last year. 170 innings pitched, 3.75 ERA. Really similar value to what you're going to expect from a Nestor Cortez. So they added 2 of those guys to this rotation, where I was talking just last week, you're missing that 5th spot without a Brandon Woodruff. And now DL Hall also put on the 60-day DL. You had your top 4 set. You needed that 5th. They went out. You got them. You feel comfortable. You're not throwing in an Aaron Ashby and just praying that you can get through 4 or 5 innings. Now you're set through 5. And then when Woodruff comes back, you hope that the team's healthy, and then you have 6. And then you don't have to rely on the heavy innings there from the starting pitching. I like this a lot. Just 1 year, $4.25 million. Where the Brewers' offseason was really quiet, now I'm feeling a lot more comfortable, I think.
Yeah, this signing it felt like it mattered. This one touched ground. It seems intentional. We weren't doing something just to do something.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't the only ones talking about who's the 5th starter. I think
Right.
everybody that was paying attention was saying that, and the Brewers were absolutely seeing that as well. So to see
Mm-hmm.
them address an intentional issue, yeah, it's a weight off the shoulders. 100% for a lot of maybes on the staff. We're not a pitching staff built of your 2 aces and then
Yeah.
a couple other guys. We really are a team that's relying on the depth of the pitching staff and the bullpen as a
Mm-hmm.
whole. So
It's
absolutely on par
it's
with.
it's a rotation of 3s and 4s, which in the regular season is going to get you to the playoffs, and then you hope that that big dog like a Tobias Myers can come out and help carry a team to go win a playoff game. But I think this team and this starting rotation and everything is built to be there in the playoffs, which brings me to my first cheese grater question. Where does the excitement for this Milwaukee Brewers team rank amongst the last 10 years? We've seen some solid rosters that were constructed in the offseason. I think the youth of this team adds a little bit, and now you have your veteran presences as well, bringing in a Cortez, a Quintana. Where does your excitement rank?
It's got to be probably the highest, man. I'm gonna give it like a 9.5, and I think that's just on Churio, man. I really do. I
Mhm.
think we haven't seen a guy like this on a Brewers team, somebody get excited about that could be an MVP candidate at 20 years old. We have the youth. Yelich is coming back. We have the vets. I think we're a full roster. I don't see too many holes. I mean, we talked about the first base hole, but we have, a good 4 or 5 plug and play guys, someone that can be that
Mhm.
eighth, ninth spot in the batting order. So 9.5, man. And I'm getting a Cheerio jersey, dude. I'm excited to see what this kid can do this year.
It's a good investment. I think so.
Hey, going to football. Drafted fourth overall to an AFC team in 1998. Came to the Packers in 2006, where I played the next 8 years. Who am I?
Ooh, uh, came over in 2006. Next 8 years. What side of the ball?
Uh, he went fourth overall from Michigan.
That was that's Charles Woodson. Yeah.
That's Charles Woodson.
Yeah, yes it is. Yeah, no, that's yeah, drafted by the Raiders. He was actually my first favorite player when I
Really?
started watching the Packers. Yeah, no, Charles Woodson was that guy, and I think Green Bay has been looking for a guy like that to make an impact. What we saw from Xavier McKinney last year was incredible. It still wasn't what Charles Woodson did for that Packers defense, man. He was one of the best to ever do it. Yeah, so Charles Woodson, that's a great one. I love the who am I's. We can stay here with the NFL. We can stay with Green Bay. What's your next step for Green Bay in free agency? What's the highest probability move with all these guys that are not and have been taken off that list?
Man, I was honestly very focused on some of those top end guys, some of those pass rushers. I really wanted to see us make a big splash. It feels like it's going to have to be a couple smaller pieces at this point. Would love to see a cornerback get taken. Would
Yeah.
love to see the defensive line get juiced up. We didn't mention it. We did sign McManus. I think that's cool and totally
Yes,
noteworthy.
very big. And Mason Crosby is retiring too. Little shout out. That'll be my what's Gouda is congrats on your career, Mason Crosby, because he was all reliable for a long time.
Love it. Absolutely. 100%. Yeah, I think it's adding depth to the defensive side of the ball. We've shown we're not overly investing into the wide receiver front if we're not even calling Devontae.
Yeah.
Wouldn't hate a vet receiver. I saw Tyler Lockett get waived. I think he'd be a fantastic wide receiver for us. Just a veteran presence who can run some routes.
I can fully stand on that. I think you need that veteran leadership. I think that's where the value comes in bringing in a guy like Lockett.
Mm-hmm. Hey, in 2011, at age 35, I led the league in interceptions. Who am I?
2011. Oh, see, now I'm thinking Champ Bailey.
No.
No. Is this a Wisconsin-based player?
Yeah.
It is. It's not Charles Woodson again.
At 35, that's Charles Woodson.
I remember watching him line up against Calvin Johnson, and that was like your Dwayne Johnson versus John Cena. Like that was a great matchup, and I think it was pretty even. I that day was a good day. But yeah, I like the Charles Woodson show. It's great. I mean, he's been highlighted for a lot of the Hall of Fame pages recently. He's someone who you love to watch talk about the Packers on his national broadcast shows too.
Yeah.
That he bleeds green and gold, although he might be more remembered as a Raider. He got that Super Bowl with Green Bay. I think that's his team, and that's who he lives and dies for. What is your worry meter at for Wisconsin? I'll let you put this on a scale of 10 as well.
Another 9.5, man. I haven't seen him execute late game or beat good teams since Arizona. I don't know. They've had a couple good wins, but they haven't shown me anything. I don't think they're overly talented. I think they've been overperforming, and they're not executing late games. So I'm prepared for it. I'm prepared for it, Kelly.
All right.
Can you name the past 5 offensive players of the years? I know our time's run a little bit low. Let's see if you can rattle them off. 5 offensive.
Justin Jefferson had to be one. Christian McCaffrey had to be another one. Saquon Barkley was another one.
Just one.
I feel like Lamar Jackson got one where he didn't win an MVP. Is there any quarterback?
Nope. You're looking at a 1 wide receiver and 1 running back left.
Derrick Henry.
Yep.
And a wide receiver who's gone off. That's Jamar Chase, right?
Nope.
No.
You're close, though.
Close.
Oh.
Not Devontae Adams. No.
Oh, one of the better wide receiver seasons that we've ever seen. Happened not too long ago, about 4 years
That's Cooper
ago.
Kupp.
That's Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, that is Cooper Kupp. All right. Yeah, I mean, my trivia, I needed a couple of questions, a little bit of assistance, but...
Hey, bonus point. Can you get the one before that? 2019. That's a tricky one. Kind of a fun pull, though.
See, that was...
It's a wide receiver.
I'm going to throw in the towel with our time.
Michael Thomas. Slant man.
No way. That's great. Yeah, I wasn't getting that.
Yeah.
Nope, was not getting that. Well, that'll do it for us today. We'll see you guys on Friday. Another edition of A Little Bit of Cheese, your bite-sized Wisconsin sports podcast.